This household book bears the unmistakable marks of use. The soft wear of fingers turning its pages, the faint stains of flour and ink, the gentle fraying along its edges. Once a practical companion in the rhythm of daily life, it guided meals, routines, and the quiet order of a home. Its pages have clearly been read, handled, and trusted, but time and use have taken their toll. The paper has become fragile, the binding weakened, and layers of dust have settled in its folds. In conserving it, the goal is not to return it to perfection. The traces of use, the smudges, the worn corners, the small repairs from the past, are part of what give it meaning. Each mark connects this book to the people who once relied on it, reflecting the domestic history it helped to shape. This is the kind of wear that tells a story of care, repetition, and the simple acts of everyday life. The book has clearly been well used. It and its contents have been appreciated, and that leaves its marks. It also means it's dirty, so the first step is dry cleaning. I tried to take a systematic approach, working one page at a time. First I remove loose dirt with a soft brush, and then I lift off what's more firmly attached to the paper surface using a smoke sponge. There are also small spots or splatters that are stuck on. Those are gently scraped from the surface with a relatively dull scalpel. That, of course, creates new loose dust, so I brush that away at the end as well. Dry cleaning can feel rather repetitive and even a bit tedious, because it's hard to see immediate results. But when you look at the smoke sponge afterwards and compare it to a fresh one, it's clear it has picked up quite a bit. And if there's still any doubt, you can just look at all the dust and dirt left on the table afterward. The old spine lining needs to be removed. The lining was originally applied to strengthen the book's structure, but most of it has worn away, and I want to work on the sections underneath, so it has to come off. To remove the lining, I brush on a gel made with water. The moisture gradually seeps into the paper and adhesive, softening it so I can gently scrape it away with the tip of a knife. I want to keep the original binding cloth as intact as possible, so I apply the gel in small sections at a time, allowing me to work around the cloth. The text block needs to be stabilized so that there's actually a book to rebind. I've rarely worked on a book with such a damaged text block, but it will come together in the end. I start with the tears along the edges of the leaves. I tear a patch of Japanese koso paper to size, apply wheat starch paste and brush it onto the tear. While it dries, I sandwich it between a sheet of nonwoven polyester and a piece of blotter paper. The blotter absorbs the moisture and the polyester prevents the patch from sticking to it. A small weight bag on top ensures the patch dries flat. All the tears are mended this way, and once I finish one side, they're patched from the reverse as well. It's simply easier and faster to take one side of a page at a time. Once all the edge tears in a section are done, I stabilize those inside the leaves. These often occur under the sewing thread, where the thread can cut, so to say, into the paper. I prepare the patches as before, but when applying them I place them under the sewing thread first, and then brush the paste underneath. It would be nearly impossible to position them neatly if I pasted them beforehand. They dry the same way as the others, and finally they also receive a patch on the reverse side. Areas where paper is missing entirely must be filled. I use Japanese koso paper for this too, but in a heavier weight than for the tear repairs, and slightly toned to better match the original paper. I tear a patch to fit the missing area and attach it with wheat starch paste, though this paste contains less water, as too much would cause the coloring to leave stains. Otherwise, the process is very similar to the tear repairs. with drying between blotter and polyester and fills from both sides. At first, I don't feel losses along the outer edges since I can't yet be completely sure of the final dimensions of the pages. I wait until the text block has been resewn so I know for sure the pages are aligned. However, in a few places entire pages are missing. Those have to be inserted before sewing as they must be included in the new structure, though I intentionally make them oversized. Each new page must match one of the existing loose ones. In a book block, the pages always come in pairs, so I trace the torn edge of a loose page onto the new one, allowing me to trim it precisely. The new page is then fitted with patches and the two can be joined under the sewing thread, as if it were one very long tear. I do the same for the final page where only half the page was missing. In this case, the whole section was loose, so I didn't have to worry about working around the sewing threads. The excess Japanese paper from the tear repairs, of course, has to be trimmed away. I do this with a sharp scalpel and a small piece of cardboard underneath so I don't cut into the pages below. And again, if anyone wonders how many tears this book had, the growing pile of offcuts is quite telling. Some pages in the text block didn't have their partner. I'm quite sure one of them must have had one once, but since I can't prove it, I won't replace it. In total, there are 3 pages that are fitted with patches for now, but instead of being pasted down immediately, they'll be secured when the book is resewn. The old cloth that served as the attachment for the boards is no longer functional. I remove it by softening the adhesive with a gel. As the moisture penetrates, I can gently lift the cloth away. I attach a new piece of cloth to the same pages where the original was fixed so I can sew through it during resewing. The original sewing was done with cords, but these were broken in several places, so I make new ones from jute cord and sew around them with new linen thread. I start sewing from the last section and work my way forward. It's important that I don't remove the original sewing. It serves as documentation of the book's original binding. It helps hold the text block together while I work, and it makes it easier for me to recreate the sewing pattern. This part of the process can be quite hard on the fingertips, but since the old sewing was very loose, it's well worth the effort, and it's crucial for the text block stability. Now that I know the pages are aligned and stable, I can trim the new pages to their final size. I don't know the exact measurements. I take them from the surrounding pages so they are consistent. It's more important that they match the rest of the book than that they follow a precise dimension. With the pages aligned, I can also assess how much paper is missing along the edges. And spoiler alert, it's a lot. I feel like I'm repeating myself, tear a patch, wheat starch paste, non-woven polyester, drying with weights, and so on. In most cases, it's the corners that need filling, though some pages require fills along the entire edge. These fills also need trimming. It's actually rare for me to use a ruler when trimming patches. Usually I can just follow the edge of the page. But here I'm creating the edge myself, so I want to make sure it's straight. As before, I trim the fills so they match the surrounding pages. That's also why I start in the middle of the book. There I have pages to measure from, and I can work my way outward. And there it is, at last, a stable text block. Do you remember when we removed the spine lining? No? I can barely remember it myself, but now it's time to make a new one. The cords create a difference in height along the spine, so I make the lining in 2 layers. First one that doesn't go over the cords to even out the surface a bit, and then the second that covers the entire spine. Before beginning repairs on the binding materials, the boards need to be stabilized. The corners are often particularly vulnerable, and if they've taken a hit, the layers of board can start to separate. I insert wheat starch paste between the layers so they bond again. In some areas, parts of the boards are missing entirely. I replace those with new acid-free board. The corners are reinforced in the same way, inserting the new pieces between the board layers. To make sure the corners dry flat, I clamp them while they dry. The fills are then trimmed, and as with the pages, I use a ruler, or it could be any straight edge actually, to recreate an even line. Okay, and this next part is a bit complicated, and I'm not entirely sure what I was thinking while I did it, but let's go through it step by step. I need to fill the binding material in the spine area, insert a new hollow back, and attach the text block to the boards, and make sure everything is aligned. The original cloth is still attached to the backboard, so I start by securing my infill there, making sure at least the baseline is straight, and let it dry. Then I adhere most of the original cloth to the infill. The old cloth had a tendency to curl, and the tears made it difficult to judge its true size. But once it's pasted down, it flattens nicely, and I let it dry before continuing. I've cut a new hollow back from acid-free cardboard and attach it to the inside of the fill. It's difficult to align perfectly when the book is lying flat and I can't position it directly over the sewing, but I do my best and then leave it to dry. Next, I attach the new joint cloth to the backboard. Board can absorb a lot of paste, so I apply it in several thin layers before gently sliding the cloth into place under the end paper, and let it dry. I repeat the same process for the joint on the front board. I'm not entirely sure I'm done working underneath the end papers yet, so I attach it without pasting the end papers down for now. And yes, you guessed it, I let it dry. I'm getting this feeling I'm repeating myself again. Anyway, now the filling cloth is attached to the front board, underneath the original binding material. It's quite similar to attaching the joint cloth, paste on, slide into place, only on the opposite side of the board, obviously. Or, well, not exactly. This part was much more difficult because it kept slipping and wouldn't stay where I wanted it, but eventually it worked out. And now everything is attached to each other. A complete book that can actually open. That's a success in itself. With a sharp scalpel, I trim the excess joint cloth to make it aligned with the text block and the end papers. I also make a small cut in the cloth at the joints near the head and tail so I can turn in the binding material at the end bands. Finally, I paste down the remaining parts of the original binding cloth onto the fill, both the turn-ins and the last piece along the spine, and everything is eventually left to dry, with non-woven polyester placed in between areas that shouldn't stick together. The boards are covered with paper. I cut pieces that overlap slightly with the original material. Once all the pieces for one side are ready, I paste them down, along with the original material, and let them dry. Then I turn in the edges. You could really do both steps in one go, pasting the outer and inner sides at once, but I was worried the paper might tear when some parts were still damp and others dry. I also paste down the end papers along the edges at the same time as turning in the binding materials. And the process is, of course, repeated on the other board. At this stage, I felt confident sealing the end papers. I paste down the original material with a bit of wheat starch paste and then applied toned Japanese paper patches on top, closing the gap behind. Once everything has dried, I trim away the excess paper. The book structure has been restored and is stable. My conservator's heart is thrilled. Only the aesthetic work remains. I start by retouching the cloth on the spine with watercolors. For the paper and the boards, I begin with watercolor pencils. They are activated with water but require less moisture than traditional watercolors. However, I wasn't entirely satisfied with how dark I could get the color using pencils alone, so I supplemented with regular watercolors on the boards as well. I know I said the retouching was the final step, but there's one small exception. A few loose pages that I removed before starting the treatment. They also need to go through the conservation process. That means dry cleaning with a brush and smoke sponge, followed by light stabilization. These are notes torn from another piece of paper or a notebook, and that's part of their story. So I only repaired tears that have occurred since then. The torn edges and staple holes remain as they are. Instead, I've made a small folder for them. It offers a bit of protection while remaining thin enough for the pages to still be stored inside the book. And with that, the book has regained its structure. Its pages turn smoothly once more, and the binding, once fragile, now holds steady. The visible wear remains, softened but not erased, a quiet testament to its long life in use. Through conservation, the book has been given more than just a physical stability. It has been given continuity. It can now continue to exist as both an object of use and a record of domestic culture, a witness to the routines, knowledge, and small habits of the past. The stains and tears that once seemed to speak of loss now tell a different story, one of endurance. In preserving this book, we preserve a fragment of everyday history, the memory of ordinary lives held in paper and thread, and the enduring beauty of the useful.